I'm Helena Ashford, 43, and I've spent 22 years quietly building a career inside naval intelligence that the people closest to me have never understood. For 2 decades, my older brother called me the spreadsheet warrior at every family table, every holiday, every retirement dinner. But last month, a Navy SEAL grabbed my arm in the lobby of an agency where my signature decides whose missions get cleared. And what I did in the 9 seconds after he let go reshaped a career, a command, and a brother's 27-year-old joke. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who never bothered to learn what you actually do? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You are not alone. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand still in a room where the loudest move was the quiet one, hit that like button and subscribe. I was 7 years old the summer I first noticed that my father loved my brother in a way he did not love me. It was the kind of noticing a child does without language, the way a child knows which dog in the neighborhood is the one to step around. We lived in a brick rambler in McLean, Virginia, 2 miles from the river, and my father was a Marine major between deployments, which meant he was home on weekends mostly, and he spent those weekends in the back garden teaching my brother how to stand at attention. Decker was 11 that summer. He was already taller than I would ever be. He had our father's chin and our father's seriousness about his own chin, and he stood out there in the grass in his Sunday shoes while my father walked behind him and tapped the back of his shoulders and said, "Square it, son, square it." I watched from the screen porch with a library copy of a novel I was probably too young to be reading, and my mother brought out a sweating pitcher of lemonade and set it on the wicker side table. She looked at me. She looked at the two of them in the garden. She did not say anything. She poured me a glass and put it next to my book and went back inside. My mother was a public school teacher, and she had the smallest mouth I have ever seen, and she said all her important sentences without using it. My father turned at the end of the lawn and saw me on the porch. He smiled. It was a real smile. He raised his hand. He went back to my brother. "Decker, square your shoulders," he said. "Helena, sweetie, hand your brother that canteen." I came down off the porch and crossed the grass and gave my brother the green Marine Corps canteen and went back to the porch. My father did not stop the drill. My brother did not look at me. I sat down on the wicker rocker and I opened my book, and I learned that afternoon that I could see them clearly and they could not see me clearly back. I learned that the seeing went one way in our house. I would not have been able to tell you at 7 what I meant by that. I can tell you now. My father was Colonel Wendell Ashford, and he had been a Marine since the year he finished high school, and he loved the Corps the way some men love a religion they were born into. He had decided, before any of us were born, that there were 2 kinds of work that mattered in the world. There was combat arms, there was everything else. He did not say that out loud because he did not need to. The whole house was arranged around the sentence. I figured it out by the time I was 8. When I was 9, he took us to the Quantico Marine Corps Exchange to buy school clothes, and he stood in the boys' section with my brother for 40 minutes, while my brother tried on a small set of utilities, and my mother and I wandered the aisles in the back. I found a framed map of the Pacific Theater in a clearance bin. The frame was cheap pine, and the matting was crooked, but the map itself was lovely. The islands were lettered in a typeface from a different century. I carried it up to my father at the cash register, and I asked him if I could have it. He laughed. He said, "Sure, kid. Hang it next to your homework." He thought I was asking for a decoration. I was asking for the world. That map lived above my desk for the next 28 years. It moved with me to my dorm room at Annapolis. It moved with me to the small apartment in Suitland, Maryland, where I lived the first year out of commissioning. It moved with me to a borrowed flat in Bahrain. It moved with me to the brick row house in Old Town Alexandria where I live now. And it hangs over the writing desk in the corner of my bedroom. And most nights it is the last thing I look at before I turn out the light. When I was 14, my brother brought home the paperwork for the Army's 18 X-ray contract. He had decided at 18 that he wanted to go straight to Special Forces selection out of basic training. He stood in our kitchen with the recruiting brochure in his hands, and my father poured a glass of bourbon, and my mother turned the kitchen faucet on and pretended to be washing something. I stood in the doorway. My brother saw me and grinned at me the way he always grinned at me, which was a grin that did not include me exactly, but did not exclude me on purpose. I asked my father that night whether the Navy had anything like that. I had been reading about the Naval Academy in the school library, and I had been keeping the catalogs in a drawer under my socks. My father did not look up from his bourbon. He said, "No, baby, and the Navy doesn't really need you anyway. You've got better things to do. The Corps gets the Ashford men," he said. "The Navy gets the rest of America." He did not mean to teach me anything that night. He taught me anyway. He taught me to do my best work without applause, and he taught me to do it quietly so that no one would think to ask me to do it louder. I went up to my room and I sat on the floor in front of the map of the Pacific, and I made a decision that I did not tell anyone about for 3 years. The summer after my junior year of high school, the acceptance letter arrived from the Naval Academy. I had not told my parents that I had taken the college board exams as early as I could take them. I had not told them I had a congressional nomination from a state senator who knew my mother from the Parent-Teacher Association. I had not told them I had spent 2 summers at a Naval Academy summer seminar pretending I was going to write a paper on the program for school. I had done all of it without my father's knowledge because I knew instinctively that the moment he knew, the project would belong to him, and I needed the project to belong to me. The letter came on a Tuesday in June. I waited for my father to come home from the base. I handed him the letter on the front porch after dinner. He read it twice. He handed it back without standing up. He said, "Well, the Navy. All right then." My mother came out onto the porch behind him and she saw the letter and she put both arms around me and she held on. Then my brother pulled up to the curb in the second-hand Jeep he had bought with his enlistment bonus. He was home on leave. He had been given his Green Beret tab 2 months before. He climbed out of the Jeep and walked up the path and saw me on the porch and saw the letter and grinned. "Navy intelligence, huh?" he said. "Spreadsheet warrior. Cute?" He thought he was being affectionate. 27 years later, those 2 words would still be sitting in my brother's mouth like a piece of gum he had forgotten how to spit out. The morning I commissioned at the Naval Academy Chapel, my father wore his retired colonel blues. He did not need to. He was already retired by then. He could have worn a suit. He put on the blues anyway. He sat in the 3rd row beside my mother. My brother was on a deployment somewhere in Eastern Africa I was not allowed to know the name of, and he sent a card to my mother's address that arrived 3 weeks after the ceremony. The card said, "Spreadsheet warrior, don't paper cut yourself." He had drawn a smiley face under his signature. After the ceremony, my father shook my hand on the steps of the chapel. He did not pull me into a hug. He did not say what other fathers were saying to other ensigns on those same steps. He shook my hand like a man returning a key, and he said, "Intelligence designator. Honest work, kid. Honest work." I learned that afternoon that honest work was the highest praise the colonel had for a job he did not respect. I learned to keep my own counsel about what the work actually was. I learned that the people who would later need to know what the work was would find me on their own, and that the people who did not need to know what the work was had paid for the right to be wrong about me with 20 years of being wrong about me. I have made my peace with the bargain. The work in the early years was a watch floor in Suitland, Maryland, and a wall of monitors and a wall of analysts and a desk where you wrote 4-line summaries of things you would not be allowed to talk about for 30 years. I was 23. I worked nights for the first year. I came home at 6 in the morning to a studio apartment with a hot plate and a window onto a parking lot, and I slept until 2, and I went back at 6 in the evening. I learned how to make coffee well enough that I could drink it black. I learned how to write a sentence so neutral that no one could trace it back to me. I learned how to listen to a man tell me a story without telling him whether or not I believed him. The watch floor in those years was lit the color of an old refrigerator. The light came down on the rows of monitors, and on the rows of analysts, and on the rows of empty styrofoam cups in a single, uninterrupted shade of fluorescence that the body, after a few months, stopped knowing how to read as time. The clocks on the walls were set to 4 different time zones. The clocks were honest. The light was not. I learned in that light to set my own clock by the rotation of the senior watch and the rotation of the deli sandwich rotation and the rotation of the senior chief's joke about the deli sandwich rotation. I learned that the only honest hour on a watch floor was the hour after the senior watch went home, when the analysts who had stayed for the right reasons turned slightly toward each other in their chairs, and the room briefly stopped pretending it was a room and became a small, bright island in the middle of a country that was sleeping. In the fall of 2005, there was a SEAL element ambush in Sadr City, and the news came through my terminal at the end of a long night. I processed the intelligence that informed the after-action review. My name did not appear in the report. I did not expect it to. I called my mother that night, and I could not say a word about what I had seen. My mother listened to the silence on the line, and then she said, "Tell me what tomorrow looks like." I said, "Coffee, ma'am, a lot of coffee." She laughed gently. It was the closest thing I had to a confession. In the summer of 2007, I was a lieutenant junior grade in Bahrain, attached to the support cell for a naval special warfare group operating across the Gulf. I wrote the targeting packages for 2 SEAL elements that worked out of Manama. One of my packages, the worst one I ever wrote, the one I rewrote 4 times in a windowless office while a sandstorm shook the building, saved a SEAL lieutenant's life. I learned about it 3 months later from his commanding officer over a beer in a windowless bar near the embassy. He thanked me. He said he did not know how to thank me enough. He asked me if there was anything I wanted. I said, "Don't tell anyone it was me." He understood. He bought me another beer. That was the night I stopped needing to be thanked. Some debts get paid in silence, and silence becomes a kind of pay. And after a few years of being paid in silence, I was the woman who walked into rooms and made the noise stop. That kind of woman is rare in any room. That kind of woman is rare even in the rooms where the noise is supposed to stop. I spent Christmas of 2014 at my parents' table. I was 32. I had just been lieutenant commander. I was working at Fort Bragg in a building with no windows on the J2 directorate of an organization, the name of which my mother could not say. My brother had flown in from a tour in Eastern Africa. He held the table. He told the stories he was allowed to tell, which were not many, but he told them well. He had the gift of telling a true story with 3 or 4 false details left in so that you would know it was true. He looked at me across the cornbread and the green beans, and he said, "What's the spreadsheet warrior up to these days? Still in a cubicle?" My father laughed. My mother looked at me across the rim of her wine glass, and she did not laugh. I said, "Still in a cubicle." It was a true sentence and a complete lie, and I let it sit on the table like a sleeping animal nobody wanted to wake. In June of 2017, my father retired from the Marine Corps League Board after 12 years on it, and the League Hall in Wilmington threw him a small dinner. I drove down from Bragg on a Friday afternoon. My brother had retired from the Army that month after 21 years as a Green Beret. The hall was full of Marines and a few Green Berets and a great deal of cheap whiskey. My father stood at the head of the long table, and he introduced my brother as my warrior, and he introduced me as my daughter who works for the Navy. My brother gave the toast. He raised his glass at me, he said, "And to my little sister, the spreadsheet warrior. May your printer never jam." 40 men laughed. My father laughed. My mother put her hand on my knee under the table. I raised my glass. I smiled. I toasted my brother. I did not flinch. Some men hand you their joke and expect you to wear it. The only way out of that costume is to stop wearing it. Quietly. For decades if you have to. After everyone left that night, my mother and I sat at the empty long table in the empty hall, and we listened to the building settle. She did not take her hand off my knee. We did not speak. We did not need to. There is a particular Tuesday in May of this year that I have been carrying since it happened. I want to walk you through it carefully because the carrying is what matters. The thing itself was 9 seconds. The carrying has been 3 weeks, and the carrying is the part that I think will mean something to you. If you have ever been the kind of woman who is mistaken for the wrong kind of woman in the wrong kind of building. I had spent the morning in a 4-hour interagency working group on a counter-proliferation matter in a conference room in the basement annex of the original headquarters building at the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia. I was 43 years old that morning. I had been a captain in the United States Navy for 1 year and 7 months. I had been on detail to the agency for 14 months. I held the position of Deputy Director for Special Operations in the Special Activities Center, which meant, among other things, that my signature went on every Special Access Program clearance for Joint Agency and Special Operations Command paramilitary missions, and that meant my judgment, on any given Wednesday morning, decided which men were trusted with which lives. I had spent the previous Friday afternoon reviewing the clearance packet for a Naval Special Warfare Development Group operator named Lieutenant Commander Cole Anders Mercer. He was 33 years old. He had been in the SEAL teams for 10 years. He had 2 combat tours that I am not going to describe to you. He was the principal cleared operator for an operation that I am going to call Operation Black Spire, which is the only name I am allowed to give you, and it is not the real name, although the operation was real. His clearance briefing was scheduled for 8 o'clock the following Wednesday morning in the vault, which is the conference room behind 2 escape doors on the 7th floor. I had reviewed his packet. I had not met him. I had no need to meet him before the briefing. I had a face from his service photograph and a long file of operational write-ups and a 1-page summary signed by his commanding officer. He was, on paper, the right man for the mission. He was, on paper, a serious operator. I had every intention of granting him the clearance. His packet sat on Friday afternoon and Monday and Tuesday morning in the red-bordered folder that lived in the safe behind my desk, and at 11:45 that Tuesday I took it out and read it through one last time. And at 12:07 I closed it and locked it back into the safe and took the SIF side stairs down to the lobby. I was in a navy blue suit. I was wearing low heels. My hair was in a French twist that I had pinned up that morning over the kitchen sink in 8 minutes. I had a lunch guest waiting for me in the alcove at the back of the agency dining room. The lobby of the original headquarters building is the room you have seen photographs of, even if you have never been in it. There's a CIA seal inlaid in the floor in marble. There's a memorial wall of unnamed stars. There is a book of honor in a glass case that lists, by year, the officers who died in the line of duty without ever being named. I have stood in that lobby 1,000 times since I was detailed to the building. I have nodded at the row of unnamed stars 1,000 times, the way you would nod at a friend across a quiet room. It is a habit I picked up from a woman who held my chair before me, and she picked it up from a woman who held it before her. The lobby was busy that afternoon. The midday traffic. The security desk on the southwest pier of the lobby is run by a man named Eugene Mosley, who is 61 years old, retired Marine Corps Master Sergeant, 20 years in the agency's Security Protective Service. Eugene has logged my badge at the inner turnstile 1,000 times. He has known the shape of my walk for 14 months. He waved when he saw me coming. I waved back. I was moving toward the inner turnstile that funnels you from the public lobby into the badging vestibule for the visitor's desk. The turnstile is single file by protocol. The protocol is older than I am. I reached the turnstile and I slowed because there was a foot of empty space ahead of me, and because protocol says you queue one badge holder at a time. I did not hear the footsteps behind me until the hand was on my arm. It was not a tap. It was a working man's grip. It closed around my right upper arm just below the shoulder, and it pulled. The pull jerked me back. My right shoulder rolled. My right foot came an inch off the floor. I caught myself. I did not stagger. I looked over my shoulder. He was 33 years old. He was in dark jeans and a charcoal jacket and a haircut so fresh, his neck was still pink. He had the build of a man who had stayed in the work he started at 23. He was not looking at me when he grabbed me. He had been looking over his shoulder at the woman behind him, who was his escort, who I would learn in the next 12 seconds was a senior case officer in my own center named Greta Halpern. He turned his head and looked at me. His face was annoyed. He had decided, in the half second before he grabbed me, that I was a clerk in a suit who had taken the wrong stairwell and was blocking what he read as a restricted corridor. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about that in a way that his life was about to spend a year unwinding. "Wrong floor, lady," he said. "This is restricted access. Step aside." He pulled again, harder this time. The grip closed and the second pull set a band of pressure into my arm above the watch band that I would see that night as a bruise the size of a credit card, the color of a thunderhead. I did not pull my arm away. I have learned, over 22 years of standing in rooms where the loudest thing in the room was supposed to be a man, that the loudest thing I can do in any room is the quiet thing. I have learned that the women who pull away are the women who get described later as having made a scene. I have learned that the women who stand still get described later as having a problem with the man. I have learned to be the second kind of woman. It is colder. It is slower. It works. I looked at him over my shoulder. I did not blink. I did not raise my chin. I let my face be the face that I show senior officers in meetings, which is the face of a woman who is listening. Greta Halpern saw it. She was 2 steps behind him. She saw my face. She saw his hand. Her own face dropped from the late-running annoyance of a case officer escorting a difficult principal into the white of a woman who has just realized she is in the middle of an incident that will end careers if she does not move now. She moved. "Cole," she said. "Cole, hands off. Now." He let go. He looked me over once. He decided I was a clerk who had gotten lost in the wrong stairwell. He did not say anything to me. He did not apologize. He turned back to Greta Halpern and said something low and sharp about being late, and he stepped past me to the turnstile. I turned away from him. I walked across the marble floor of the lobby toward Eugene Mosley's desk. I did not hurry. I did not slow. I walked the way I walk every day. I felt the eyes in the room. The lunch crowd in the lobby had noticed. The woman in the suit at the visitor's desk had noticed. A man in the green of an army officer over near the elevators had noticed. I reached the security desk. I placed my badge on the counter, lanyard side down, so that Eugene could see the photograph. "Eugene," I said, "log the contact, please. Use the timestamp on your overhead camera, Southwest Pier, 1209. Hand on my right upper arm. 2 pulls. I want the second one in the report." Eugene Mosley did not ask me a single question. He scanned my badge. The reader chimed. He looked at the screen. He picked up his radio. "Lobby watch to Deputy Director's office," he said. "Code 2, contact, badge holder, priority 1, Southwest Pier, time 12:09, witness on hand." Across the lobby, Mercer heard the words, "Deputy Director" and "Priority 1," and looked up for the first time since he had let go of my arm. He looked at me. He looked at Eugene. He looked at his own hand. He looked at me again. Greta Halpern leaned in close to his ear. I could hear her from where I stood. She had not lowered her voice enough. "You just put a hand on the woman who is signing your packet tomorrow morning," she said. He did not say anything. I took my badge back. I put it around my neck. I walked across the lobby to the visitor's desk to meet my lunch guest without looking back. My lunch guest was a senior analyst from the Defense Intelligence Agency, a man I had known for 10 years. He saw me coming. He stood. He noticed my left hand instinctively cupping my right upper arm, the way a person carries a hot mug she has just set down. He said nothing. "Long morning?" he said. "A short one," I said. "Let's eat." I did not look back at the turnstile. I have learned, over 22 years, that the second loudest thing I can do in a room is to not look back. After lunch, I went back up to my office on the 7th floor, and I closed the door, and I sat at my desk, and I ran the procedural play I had run 100 times for other officers in the building, but had never had to run for myself. I wrote the incident statement first. I wrote it on the unclassified side of the computer in a Word document. Single page, 8 paragraphs, no adjectives. I am very good at writing 8 paragraphs with no adjectives. I have spent my whole career writing those paragraphs about other people. The one I wrote that afternoon about myself was the smallest, plainest, most precise thing I had ever written, and it took me 22 minutes to write, and I signed it, and I printed it, and I walked it down the corridor to the Office of Security, and I handed it to the duty officer in person. He read the first paragraph, and he looked up. "Ma'am, this is in the building," he said. "Yes," I said. "Is the principal still on premises?" "He is in pre-brief in the basement annex with Ms. Halpern. He has a clearance hearing tomorrow at 0800. "Understood, ma'am. We will have a report on the director's desk by close of business." I walked back to my office. I closed the door. I picked up the secure phone, and I called my boss, Wesley Aldrich. Wesley was at the State Department for a deputy committee meeting. He answered on the 3rd ring. He always answers on the 3rd ring. I do not know why. He has always answered on the 3rd ring in 14 months. I have stopped asking. I gave him 4 sentences. I told him a SEAL lieutenant commander had put a hand on me at the lobby turnstile at 12:09. I told him Eugene had logged it. I told him the Office of Security would have a report on his desk by 5. I told him I was scheduled to chair the principal's Black Spire clearance briefing at 0800 the following morning, and that I had no intention of moving the briefing or changing the agenda. Wesley exhaled. "Helena," he said. "It is logged," I said. "I want it to run the procedural play. I do not want a personal favor." "Are you running the Black Spire briefing tomorrow morning?" "I am." "Good. Do not move the briefing. Do not change the room. Do not change a single line of the agenda." He shows up. You sit at the head of the table. You ask him every question on the packet. You sign what your judgment says to sign. You let security do what security does. Are we clear? Crystal. Helena. Sir. Don't smile at him. Don't frown at him. Don't look at his hands. I will not. Wesley Aldrich had been my boss for 14 months. He had been my reader of men for 20 years before that. I had served under him at a JSOC station in 2015 when he was a station chief, and I was a lieutenant commander on my first JSOC tour. He had pulled me into the agency last year over the objections of 3 people who did not understand what he saw in a Navy intelligence captain. He saw that I did not need anything from a man in a room to do my job well in the room. He saw that I would, when the moment came, do the right thing without raising my voice. He had been waiting 14 months to see me do it. He had not been hoping for the test. He had been preparing me for it. At 3:45, I called an old friend of mine in the intelligence community, a Navy captain named Theo Beckman, who is currently at the National Security Agency. He had served with me at JSOC. He was the only person in the building, on either side of the river, who would have let me cry. I did not cry. I told him what had happened. He listened. He listened for a long time. The kind of listening that good intelligence officers do is not silence. It is small noises you make to let the other person know you have not put the phone down. He made the noises. When I finished, he said one sentence. Tomorrow, he said. Sit in the chair the way the chair is supposed to be sat in. Don't make it about him. Make it about every junior woman who's going to walk into that lobby in the next 10 years. I thanked him. I hung up. I did not cry, although I sat at my desk with my hands folded for a long time, looking at the photograph of my mother on my credenza. That sentence sat under my sternum for the rest of the afternoon, like a swallowed bone that decided to be part of me. At 6:20, I drove home up the George Washington Parkway with the windows down. The Potomac was glass at that hour, brown and green, the dogwoods out along the river. I did not turn on the radio. I thought about my brother. I thought about how much of my life had been organized around not flinching at his voice. I thought about how easy it would be to flinch tomorrow morning at the wrong man. I came in the back door of my row house in Old Town. I heated a bowl of tomato soup. I sat at my kitchen island under the single pendant lamp I keep on at night when I live alone, which I do, and I rolled up my right sleeve. The bruise was the size of a credit card. It was the color of a thunderhead. I photographed it with my personal phone. I put the photograph in a folder titled 26 May Miscellaneous. I rolled the sleeve back down. I ate my soup. I rinsed the bowl. I went to bed at 10. I slept 4 hours. The 5th hour, I lay awake and I rehearsed, in my head, the questions I would ask Lieutenant Commander Cole Anders Mercer at the head of the vault table in the morning. I rehearsed them in the voice my mother had used when I was 8 years old, and she was teaching me to add fractions in the kitchen. I rehearsed them in the voice she used to tell me that the kitchen would still be standing in the morning. I rehearsed them in the voice she used. I arrived at Langley at 5:30 in the morning. I parked in the lot I always park in. I went up the stairwell I always take. I keyed into my office. I made my own coffee in the sweet kitchenette because the kitchen on the floor would not open for another 40 minutes. I sat at my desk. I read the Black Spire packet for the 4th and final time. I wrote 7 questions on a yellow legal pad in my own handwriting. I closed the packet. I took off my watch. I placed it on the desk. I rolled up my right sleeve. The bruise had darkened overnight, edge to edge, the color of a cathedral window in late afternoon light. I looked at it for a long minute. I rolled the sleeve back down. I put the watch back on. The band rested 1/8 of an inch below the upper edge of the bruise. You could see it from across a table if you knew where to look. You would not see it from across a table if you did not know where to look. I had set it where I had set it. That was the place I was leaving it. At 7:30, Sasha Kane, my flag aide, was already in the vault. She had been in the vault since 6:30. She was 28 years old, a lieutenant junior grade, a naval intelligence officer, 2 years past commissioning, and she was the best aide I had ever had. She had set the table, 8 chairs, a pitcher of water at each setting, notepads, pens, the recording light over the door, the seal of the Special Activities Center on the wall. I came down from the 7th floor at 7:55. I took my seat at the head of the table, facing the door. Wesley Aldrich sat to my right. The Defense Intelligence Agency representative sat to my left. The Special Operations Command J3 representative sat next to her. The National Security Council liaison sat next to him. The National Counterterrorism Center J2 representative sat across. The Legal Counsel sat next to her. The Case Officer of Record sat at the foot. The principal's chair was the 8th chair. It was empty. The recording clock above the door read 7:57. At 7:58, the door opened. Greta Halpern came through it first, 2 steps ahead of her principal, as protocol requires. She caught my eye. She nodded, once, almost a flinch. She walked to her assigned seat and sat. Cole Mercer came in behind her. He stopped when he saw me. He stopped for a full second. The kind of stop a body does when the brain has just stalled on a fact it cannot reconcile. The kind of stop that happens when a man who has been in rooms his whole life walks into a room he has never been in before and finds out, at the doorway, who is in it. I watched him. I did not move. I did not change my face. He recovered. He took his seat. He set his hands flat on the table. I let the recording clock flip. "Good morning," I said. "This is a special access program clearance briefing for Operation Black Spire. We are on the record. The recording will be archived under the standard 60-year retention. Lieutenant Commander Mercer, please state your full name, rank, branch, and command for the record." His voice caught once on the last name. He recovered. "Lieutenant Commander Cole Anders Mercer," he said, "United States Navy, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." "Thank you," I said. "Counsel, please read in the program." The legal counsel read in Black Spire. I let her read. I did not look at Mercer while she read. I looked at the wall. I looked at the recording clock. I looked at Wesley. When she finished, I picked up my legal pad. I asked Mercer my 7 questions. I asked them in the order I had written them on the pad. I asked them in a voice that did not change between question 2 and question 7. He answered each one. He answered them well. He answered them with the precision of a man who had spent 10 years rehearsing answers for rooms that were not the room he was sitting in, but were rooms like it. He was good at the answers. He was good at the answers because the answers were what kept the world he was about to inherit from breaking. I gave him the answers because the answers were his to give. Greta Halpern wrote a note on her pad. I saw it from across the table. She did not lift her hand to cover it. The note said, in her small, neat handwriting, "He has not looked at her hands." I read it upside down. I did not let my face change. At 8:53, I closed the legal pad. I opened the Black Spire packet to the signature page. I picked up my pen. I did not look at Mercer. I signed. I slid the packet to Sasha Kane. "Clearance granted under the standing authorities," I said. "Recording stops at 08:54. Thank you all." The recording stopped. The light went off. The room exhaled. Sasha collected the packet. Wesley Aldrich stayed seated, hands folded. Greta Halpern stood. Mercer stood. He looked across the table at me. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. "Ma'am," he said. "Lieutenant Commander. Permission to address you directly, off the record, in this room, for 30 seconds. Denied." I let it sit. He held the doorframe. "There is a process," I said. "The Office of Security will contact your command this afternoon. You may address the matter through that process. We will not address it across this table." I closed my legal pad. I stood. "Dismissed." He went. Wesley closed his door on the 7th floor at 9:15. I sat across from his desk. He looked at me for a long moment. "You ran that the way it needed to be run," he said. "I signed the packet." "Yes, you did." "He is the right man for the mission." "Yes, he is. And he is also the man who put his hand on you yesterday. Both things will be true on the same day. That is what this job is." "Sir, Helena, you did the right thing by signing it, and you did the right thing by logging him. Some days the job asks you to do both with the same hand. Don't let anyone tell you that is contradiction." He turned the Black Spire packet 90 degrees on his desk. "It is the agency tell for a matter that has been closed. I have seen him do it 5 times in 14 months. He had never done it for me before." The agency's letter of formal complaint went out from the Office of Security on Friday morning. It went to Captain Brock Henning, the SEAL '06 who runs the Naval Special Warfare Development Group at Dam Neck. He read it twice. I learned this later. He called me on the secure phone at 3:12 that afternoon. "Captain Ashford," he said. "Brock Henning, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." "Captain Henning. Ma'am, I am calling to apologize for the conduct of Lieutenant Commander Mercer in your lobby on Tuesday. There is no excuse. I have read the security report. I have spoken with my senior enlisted leader. I will be addressing the matter at the command level today. I wanted you to hear it from me first." "Thank you, Captain. I appreciate the call. Ma'am, may I ask you a direct question?" "Go ahead." "Did you sign his Black Spire packet?" "I did." "May I ask why?" "Because he is the right man for the mission, and because the mission and the man are two different paragraphs in his file. I read both." "Ma'am," Captain Henning, "do what you have to do at your command. I have done what I had to do at mine. We will not need to speak about this again." He said, "Yes, ma'am." We did not need to speak about it again. We have not, in the 3 weeks since. Mercer was pulled from active rotation that Monday and slotted into a training cadre billet in a windowless office in the squadron's training annex at Dam Neck. He kept his trident, he kept his clearance, he kept his pay. He lost the team. He sat in that office, writing instructional packages for new operators on close protection and breach geometry. He was, I am told, very good at it. He hated it. I learned this third hand, the way you learn things in a community of communities. The information moved on a channel I cannot describe and cannot stop. I was not seeking it. I did not request it. It arrived. I will not pretend I did not have a feeling the first time I heard the number 16 weeks that sat in my chest like a small struck bell. The bell was not vindication. It was something closer to recognition. The bell rang for one beat, and then it stopped. In the second week after the briefing, Greta Halpern sent me an email through the secure system. One line. "Captain Ashford, I would like to apologize in person, whatever time works for you. G." I read it. I replied. "Friday at 10. Coffee, bring nothing." On Friday at 10, she sat across from my desk in my office on the 7th floor. She did not know what to say. She held the cup of coffee in both hands. She did not drink from it. "I should have walked him through the protocol before we came up the corridor," she said. "I knew he was wound up." "You did your job," I said. "You stepped forward, you called his name. That is what I needed from you. We are good." She almost cried. I slid her a tissue. I refilled her cup. We talked after that about her 2 boys and her husband and her commute. She left at 10:40. She closed the door behind her with the care of a person closing the door of a sick room. I have always liked Greta Halpern. I have liked her more since. In the 3rd week, Mercer sent me a letter. He wrote it on plain paper. He did not send it through the secure email system. He hand-carried it to Langley Security in a sealed envelope with my name on the front. The letter was 1 page. It did not ask for anything. It said he understood what he had done. It said he understood why I had signed the packet. It said he understood why the chair he had sat in did not get to negotiate with the chair I had sat in. He signed it with his full name and his rank. The letter sat on my desk for 48 hours. I read it twice. I filed it in his clearance jacket without responding. Some apologies are best read in silence. Some men need to be allowed to have offered them without being thanked. I did not thank him. I let the letter live in his file where it would belong for the rest of his career. In the 4th week, Wesley Aldrich called me into his office. He had the security report and a copy of the Henning command memo on his desk. "He is going back to operational rotation in 12 weeks, he said. "Henning is recommending it. I am concurring." "Good. You have any objection?" "None." "Helena." "Sir." "You did this clean. I want you to know I noticed." "Thank you, sir. Now go take Friday off. That is an order. Drive somewhere. See your mother." I walked out of his office with my hands in my pockets. The corridor lights were bright. Friday was ahead of me like a small clearing in tall grass. I drove to Wilmington on a Friday afternoon in late May to see my parents. The dogwoods were down by then. The honeysuckle was up. I took the route I had taken since I was a midshipman, down I-95 and then east on the small roads. I arrived at 1 in the afternoon. My mother had set out iced tea on the back porch. My father was in a folding chair under the magnolia in the back garden, the right side of his mouth still pulled down. He could say a word or two in a row. He had been working with the speech therapist since March. He had 4 good 4-word sentences. He was rationing them. He looked up when I came through the side gate. He raised his left hand. He said my name. It came out in 2 halves. Hell, Ina. Daddy. I kissed the top of his head. I had not kissed the top of his head since I was 14. He smelled like the same drugstore aftershave he had worn for 40 years. My mother pretended to be busy with the kettle. We sat at the card table for an hour. He could not say much. He could play gin. We played gin. He won 2 hands. He smiled. He patted my hand on the table and left his hand on mine, a beat too long. Captain, he said with effort. Now. Yes, sir. Good. Thank you, Daddy. He could not say more than that. He did not need to. The word good sat between us like a small warm coal I had been waiting for my whole life. It sat there for the rest of the afternoon and did not go out. I helped my mother shell peas at the kitchen counter at 4:15. She talked about the garden, she talked about the neighbor's dog, she talked about the Marine Corps League dinner my father was no longer well enough to attend. Then she stopped. She did not turn to face me. She kept shelling. You have a bruise, she said. I do. Are you all right? I am. Did you do what you needed to do? I did. Good. A long silence. The peas dropped into the bowl. The kitchen smelled like garden dirt and tap water. Helena, baby, your brother's going to call you in the next few weeks. When he does, let him. Did he tell you that? No, I just know he is going to call you. Let him. My mother had spent 43 years being right about the small important things. She was rarely wrong about the moments. I did not ask her how she knew. I asked her where to put the bowl. She showed me where to put the bowl. She kept shelling. The kitchen radio was on the public station at a volume so low it was almost a memory of a radio. A woman was reading a poem on the public station. The poem was about a field. My mother did not turn it up. My mother had never turned up a radio in her life. The volume of the world in my mother's kitchen was the volume my mother had decided the world should have. And the world had agreed. I thought, standing there with my hands wet and a pea on my thumb, that I had never asked my mother what she had wanted to be when she was 20. I had asked her what she had been. I had not asked her what she had wanted. There is a difference. There has always been a difference. The difference is the size of a life. Mama, I said. What did you want to be? She did not stop shelling. A teacher, baby. And a mother. Both. And she finally looked up. She had her father's eyes. I had only just noticed that afternoon. I had been looking at her for 43 years, and I had only just noticed. And to be the woman in the chair when the world finally got around to my children. Mama. I did all 3, baby. 3 for 3. Don't make a face at me. I did not make a face at her. I put the bowl on the counter where she had told me to put it. I said goodbye at the screen door at 6. My father stood up from his chair on his own, which my mother said he had not done in a week. He put his left hand on my shoulder. He squeezed once. He looked me in the eye. I was, he said slowly, wrong. Daddy, long. Time, wrong. I know. Drive. Safe. I drove back to McLean with the windows down, and I did not turn on the radio. I came in the back door. I went upstairs and I sat on the floor in front of the map of the Pacific in my bedroom for a long time. The map was unchanged. The light through the window was different. The light through the window was always different. The map was always the same. That was the point of it. I went down to the kitchen at 10, and I sat at the kitchen island under the pendant lamp. I did not pour wine. I drank water. I thought about the way my father had said, long time wrong. I thought about how a man who could no longer make the right sounds with his mouth could still make the right sounds with his face. I thought about my brother. I did not call him. I waited. 2.5 weeks went by. The administrative dust around Mercer settled. I returned to the rhythm of the work. The work, as Wesley liked to say, was the kindness in it. The work continued. The work had always continued. The work was always going to continue. Sasha Kane was pinned lieutenant on a Thursday afternoon in the vault. I pinned her myself. 9 people came, I made a 4-sentence speech. I told her that the best thing about being a lieutenant in the Navy was that you could no longer pretend you did not know what you were doing. The room laughed. She cried a little. Wesley stopped by with a card. The Defense Intelligence Agency analyst sent flowers. A small good moment. A new clearance packet landed on my desk that Friday morning. A different Special Operations Command Tier 1 operator from a different unit. A different mission. I opened the packet. I recognized the principal's name on the cover. He was a man whose package I had written in Bahrain in 2007, and who was now, 18 years later, a senior chief. I smiled for the first time in the workday. I picked up my pen. I went to work. On the Tuesday evening, 3 weeks to the day after the lobby, I was driving north on the parkway from Langley to home. The phone rang on the dashboard. The display said, Decker. I let it ring twice. I picked up on the third. Decker. Helena? A long pause. I heard. Heard what? I heard about the lobby. From who? An old buddy at Bragg. He has a brother in the DevGru command structure. He called me last week. I sat on it for 9 days. I'm pulling into a gas station right now in Fayetteville. I need to say something to you, and I need to say it before I lose the nerve. Go ahead. I was wrong. A long pause. I was wrong for 27 years. The joke was a joke, and then it was a label, and then it was the only thing I let myself see, and I was wrong. I am sorry. I do not need you to forgive me today. I needed you to hear me say it. Decker. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Are you all right? I will be. Drive safe. You too. I hung up. I drove the rest of the way to McLean with my hand on the steering wheel and my other hand flat on my chest, the way my mother used to drive when she was trying not to cry. I sat at the kitchen island that night. I did not eat. I put both hands flat on the marble and I looked at them. The bruise had faded all the way out. The skin above the watchband was clear. 27 years of one sentence got walked back in 9 minutes on the side of a Carolina highway. I had not asked for the walkback. The walkback was not the point. The walkback was a side effect of a man finally telling himself the truth about his own joke. On the Wednesday morning, the day after Decker's call, I arrived at Langley at my usual time. I opened my safe. I pulled the clearance jacket I had filed Mercer's letter into 3 weeks before. I opened it. The letter was there, where I had filed it, untouched. I closed the jacket. I locked the safe. I got to work. Some men's apologies belong in their own jackets. Some men's apologies belong on the side of a Carolina highway. The trick is knowing which is which, and not mixing them up. The cherry blossom trees outside my office window were dropping their last petals. It was late May at Langley. The compound was busy. The new black spire rotation, Mercer included, was in the field somewhere I could not name. Wesley was recommending me for a 1-star board next year. Sasha had a new haircut and a new boyfriend. My mother called every Sunday. My father could now say 4-word sentences. My brother called on Tuesdays. I want to take you with me through a Friday afternoon in that last week of May. It is the quietest Friday I have had in a long time. I want you to see it because I want you to see what the quiet looks like when it finally arrives. I stood at my office window with a coffee at 2:30 in the afternoon. The blossoms were mostly fallen, but the trees were bright green. I was thinking about nothing in particular. Sasha knocked on the doorframe. Ma'am, you have one more on the calendar at 3. The Defense Intelligence Agency analyst, your lunch friend, says he is coming up to talk about a Pacific thing. Coffee, no agenda. Send him up, bring 2. Yes, ma'am. He came in at 3:03 carrying a paper bag. He produced a single croissant on a napkin. He said he was passing the cafeteria. He sat. We talked about the Pacific thing for 12 minutes. We talked about a movie he had seen. We talked about whether either of us was going to retire, and laughed about whether either of us was ever going to retire. He stood to leave. At the door, he stopped. I heard about it, he said. I figured. You handled it the way it should be handled. I had help. You had Wesley. I had Wesley. I had Eugene at the desk. I had Greta Halpern. I had Sasha. I had my mother. I had a lot of people. And the brother. And the brother, eventually. He smiled. He left. He closed the door behind him with the same care Greta Halpern had used 3 weeks before. I think they all use the same care, the people who know me, when they close my office door. I do not know who taught it to them. I think it is the kind of care a person learns by accident and then never lets themselves unlearn. I drove home up the parkway with the windows down. The dogwoods were finished, the honeysuckle was starting. I did not turn on the radio. I thought about my mother. I thought about my father's long time wrong. I thought about my brother's gas station in Fayetteville. I thought about Cole Mercer in some country I am not going to name. I did not wish him ill. I did not wish him anything. I just thought about him. It was the cleanest I had thought about a man in a long time. I did not need anything from him. That, after all of it, was the gift. Not requiring a thing from a man is a kind of freedom that the men who ask for it never quite seem to understand. I called my mother on Sunday at 5. We talked for 36 minutes. She described the new strawberry plants. My father took the phone for 2 minutes. He said, "Hi, baby, Captain, garden, love." I said, "Love you, Daddy." My mother took the phone back. "Your brother called me Tuesday." "I know." "He said he called you." "He did." "Are you all right with that?" "I am." "Good." A pause. "Helena, the plebe induction photograph, the one from 2000, I moved it down to the front of the piano. It was behind the wedding picture, and I moved it forward this morning. I just wanted you to know I moved it." "Mama, I love you, baby. Talk to you Sunday." I stood at my kitchen island with the pendant lamp on after I hung up. I was scrolling on my personal phone for a recipe, and the bruise photograph from 26 May miscellaneous came up. I looked at it. I looked at my wrist. The skin was clear. I did not delete the photograph. I am not keeping it for any reason that has a word. I am letting it stay. I locked the phone. I turned off the pendant lamp. I want to tell you one last thing before I let you go. If you have ever been the spreadsheet warrior in somebody's joke, if you have ever been the lady at the wrong turnstile, if you have ever stood at a security desk and used a quiet voice in a loud room, I want you to know that the quiet voice is the loudest thing in the room. Use it. You do not have to win the room by raising your voice. You have to win it by being the person whose voice it actually belongs to in the first place. That is not revenge. That is just standing in the truth. The truth, in my experience, is usually waiting for you to stop apologizing for it before it can do its job. The pendant lamp clicked off. The kitchen window held the dark. I went to bed. If you stayed with me to the end of this one, thank you. It means a great deal that you sat with the quiet parts of this story, because the quiet parts were the ones that took 27 years to earn. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever stood at a counter or a turnstile or a kitchen island and used a quiet voice in a room that expected a loud one? Did the room change eventually, or are you still waiting for it to? And if you have a brother, a father, or a friend who carries an old joke about you in their mouth like a piece of gum they cannot figure out how to spit out, what would it take for them to set it down? Leave me your answers in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story sat with you, hit the like button and subscribe so the next one can find you when it's ready.